A list of museum websites by U.S. State at Arts.gov Blue Star Museum Map. arts.gov/blue-star-museum-map. arts.gov, the website for the National Endowment for the Arts. twitter.com/NIAArts. facebook.com/nationalendowment Fort Hearts. linkedin.com/company/national-endowment-for-the-arts. itunes.apple.com/us/podcast/art-works-podcasts/id 10589118229 $2, Apple Store. instagram.com/NIAArts. youtube.com/user/NIAArts. Chapter 1. American Museum Websites by State. 1. Alaska Museum Websites. ketchikanmuseums.org, Tongass Historical Museum. Palmer. PalmerHistoricalSociety.org, Palmer Historical Society/Colony House Museum. Sitka. Museums.alaska.gov, Sheldon Jackson Museum. Valdez. ValdezMuseum.org, Valdez Museum and Historical Archive. Alabama Museum Websites. Birmingham. artsbma.org, Birmingham Museum of Art. McWane.org, McWane Science Center. SouthernMuseumOfFlight.org, Southern Museum of Flight. Visit Vulcan.com, Vulcan Park and Museum. Dothan. LandmarkParkDothan.com, Landmark Park/Alabama Agricultural Museum. WiregrassMuseum.org, Wiregrass Museum of Art. Fort Rucker. ArmyAviationMuseum.org, U.S. Army Aviation Museum. Huntsville. MemorialMuseum.org, U.S. Veterans Memorial Museum. Mobile. MobileMuseumofArt.com, Mobile Museum of Art. GulfQuestMuseum.com, National Maritime Museum of the Gulf of Mexico/Gulf Quest. Orville. ahc.alabama.gov/properties/cahaba/cahaba.aspx, Old Cahaba Archaeological Park. Tuscaloosa. allmenh.museums.ua.edu, Alabama Museum of Natural History. BryantMuseum.com, Paul W. Bryant Museum. Arkansas Museum Websites. Blytheville. DeltaGatewayMuseum.org, Delta Gateway Museum. Little Rock. ClintonPresidentialCenter.org and ClintonLibrary.gov, Clinton Presidential Center. Arizona Museum Websites. Apache Junction. SuperstitionMountainMuseum.org, Superstition Mountain Museum. Chandler. AZRYMuseum.org, Arizona Railway Museum. ChandlerMuseum.org, Chandler Museum. Dragoon. Amarant.org, Amarant Museum. Eloy. SCVHmuseum.org, Santa Cruz Valley Historic Museum. Florence. Pinal County Historical Museum.org, Pinal County Historical Museum. Gilbert. HDSouth.org, HD South, home of the Gilbert Historical Museum. Mesa. Arizona MuseumOfNaturalHistory.org, Arizona Museum of Natural History. AZCAF.org, CAF Air Base Arizona. IdeaMuseum.org, IDEA. Museum. Phoenix. AZScience.org, Arizona Science Center. PHXTrolley.org, Arizona Street Railway Museum. DeerValley.asu.edu, Deer Valley Petroglyph Preserve. Herd.org, Herd Museum. PHXArt.org, Phoenix Art Museum. HeritagesQuarapHX.org, Rawson House Museum at Heritage Square. PuebloGrande.com, Esedov Vaaki Museum, formerly Pueblo Grande Museum. Prescott. FippenArtMuseum.org, Fippen Museum. Scottsdale. WesternSpirit.org, Western Spirit, Scottsdale's Museum of the West. California Museum Websites. Glendale. NeonMona.org, Museum of Neon Art. Imperial. Pioneersmuseum.net, Imperial County Historical Society Pioneers Museum. Independence. nps.gov/mans, National Historic Site. Law Canada Flitridge. DescansoGardens.org, Descanso Gardens. La Jolla. LaJollaHistory.org, La Jolla Historical Society. MCASD.org, Museum of Contemporary Art San Diego. Lakeport. LakeCountyCA.gov/325/museums, Museums of Lake County. Lodi. SanJoaquinHistory.org, San Joaquin County Historical Society and Museum. Long Beach. MOLA.org, Malat. Los Angeles. AAFFmuseum.org, African American Firefighter Museum. TheAutry.org, Autry Museum of the American West. JANM.org, Japanese American National Museum. LACMA.org, LACMA Los Angeles County Museum of Art. MuseumofTolerance.com, Museum of Tolerance. Los Gatos. LosGatos.org, New Museum Los Gatos. McClellan. Aerospaceca.org, Aerospace Museum of California. Mountain View. ComputerHistory.org, Computer History Museum. Ojai. OhioValleyMuseum.org, Ojai Valley Museum. Oxnard. CIMMVC.org, Channel Islands Maritime Museum Inc. Pacific Grove. PGMuseum.org, Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History. San Diego. SDAutomuseum.org, San Diego Automotive Museum. SDMG.org, San Diego Mineral and Gem Society Museum. SDMart.org, San Diego Museum of Art. DIA.org, Timken Museum of Art. San Francisco. BookbindersMuseum.org, American Bookbinders Museum. ASEANART.org, Asian Art Museum. TheCJM.org, Contemporary Jewish Museum. AAO.org/museum, Trulson Marmor Museum of the Eye. WaltDisney.org, Walt Disney Family Museum. San Jose. HistorySanJose.org, History San Jose. SJMUSArt.org, San Jose Museum of Art. TheTech.org, Tech Interact Active. San Mateo. Curiosity.org, Curiosity. Santa Barbara. SBMA.net, Santa Barbara Museum of Art. sbnature.org/visit/c-center, Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History C Center. Santa Cruz. SantaCruzMuseum.org, Santa Cruz Museum of Natural History. Santa Monica. HealthyBay.org/aquarium, Heal the Bay Aquarium. SantaMonicaHistory.org, Santa Monica History Museum. Sausalito. BayAreaDiscoveryMuseum.org, Bay Area Discovery Museum. Solvang. ElverHoj.org, Elverhoj Museum. WildlingMuseum.org, Widling Museum of Art and Nature. Stanford. Museum.stanford.edu, Cantor Arts Center, Stanford University. Truckee. MuseumofTruckeeHistory.org, Museum of Truckee History. TruckeeHistory.org, Truckee Donner Historical Society Old Truckee Jail Museum. Vacaville. Facebook.com/PacificGA Sand-Electric/videos/the-PG-artifact-museum/195689632305824, PG&E Artifact Museum. Walnut Creek. RuthBancroftGarden.org, Ruth Bancroft Garden. Woodside. Filoli.org, Filoli. Yorba Linda. NixonFoundation.org, Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Museum. Yuba City. SutterCountyMuseum.org, Sutter County Museum. Colorado Museum websites. Alamosa. MuseumTrail.org/San-Luis-Valley-Museum, San Luis Valley Museum. Boulder. colorado.edu/Fisk, Planetarium. Broomfield. BroomfieldVeterans.org, Broomfield Veterans Museum. Colorado Springs. Pikes Peak Children's Museum.org, Pikes Peak Children's Museum. Denver. Anschutzcollection.org, American Museum of Western Art. COWomen'sHistory.org, Center for Colorado Women's History. CliffordStillMuseum.org, Clifford Still Museum. DenverArtMuseum.org, Denver Art Museum. HuguenotStreet.org, Denver Museum of Nature and Science. HistoryColorado.org, History Colorado Center. KirklandMuseum.org, Kirkland Museum of Fine and Decorative Art. McCadenver.org, Museum of Contemporary Art Denver. Evergreen. jeffco.us/1251/Hiwen-Heritage-Park, Hiwen Heritage Park and Museum. Fort Garland. FortGarlandMuseum.org, Fort Garland Museum and Cultural Center. Fraser. GrandCountyHistory.org, Cousins Ranch Museum. Georgetown. Hotel de Paris Museum.org, Hotel de Paris Museum. Golden. BuffaloBill.org, Buffalo Bill Museum and Grave. Colorado Railroad Museum.org, Colorado Railroad Museum. Grand Lake. GrandLakeHistory.org, Grand Lake Area Historical Society Kaufman House Museum. Hot Sulphur Springs. GrandCountyHistory.org, Pioneer Village Museum. Lakewood. DMMDT.org, Denver Museum of Miniatures, Dolls, and Toys. Leadville. HealyHouseMuseum.org, Healy House Museum and Dexter Cabin. Longmont. LongmontMuseum.org, Longmont Museum. Loveland. TheLovelandMuseum.org, Loveland Museum. Peterson Space for Space. PeteMuseum.org, Peterson Air and Space Museum. Pueblo. SDC-ARTS.org, Buell Children's Museum. HistoryColorado.org/L-Pueblo-History-Museum, El Pueblo History Museum. SDC-ARTS.org, Sangre de Cristo Arts and Conference Center. Trinidad. TrinidadHistoryMuseum.org, Trinidad History Museum. Ray. cityofray.org/179/Ray-Museum, Ray Museum. Connecticut Museum websites. Bristol. ClockandWatchMuseum.org, American Clock and Watch Museum. Canterbury. portal.ct.gov/ecd-Prudence Crandall Museum, Prudence Crandall Museum. Canton. cantonmuseum.org, Canton Historical Museum. Cheshire. barkermuseum.com, Barker Character, Comic, and Cartoon Museum. Danbury. danburymuseum.org, Danbury Museum and Historical Society. East Granby. portal.ct.gov/ecd-Old Newgate, Old Newgate Prison and Copper Mine. East Hartford. www.legacyfoundation.org, Iwo Jima/World War II Museum. East Haven. ShorelineTrolley.org, Shoreline Trolley Museum. Fairfield. Fairfieldhistory.org, Fairfield Historical Society. Guilford. portal.ct.gov/ecd-Henry Whitfield State Museum, Henry Whitfield State Museum. Highlandhouse.org, Highland House Museum. Hartford. marktwainhouse.org, Mark Twain House and Museum. chs.org, Connecticut Historical Society. ctlandmarks.org, Connecticut Landmarks. Kensington. New Britain Youth Museum.org, Hungerford Nature Center. Lebanon. govtrumblehosedar.org, Governor Jonathan Trumbull House. Manchester. lutzmuseum.org, Lutz Children's Museum. Mystic. dpnc.org, Denison Pequot Post Nature Center. mysticmuseumofart.org, Mystic Museum of Art. New Haven. newhavenmuseum.org, New Haven Museum. artgallery.yale.edu, Yale University Art Gallery. Newtown. everwondermuseum.org, Everwonder Children's Museum. Norwalk. steppingstonesmuseum.org, Stepping Stones Museum for Children. Old Lyme. florencegriswoldmuseum.org, Florence Griswold Museum. Old Mystic. oldmystichistory.org, Old Mystic History Center, formerly known as Indian and Colonial Research Center. Simsbury. simsburyhistory.org, Simsbury Historical Society. Southington. thebarnesmuseum.org, Barnes Museum. Stamford. stamfordmuseum.org, Stamford Museum and Nature Center. Tolland. tollandhistorical.org, Old Tolland County Jail Museum, Tolland Historical Society. Torrington. kidsplaymuseum.org, Kids Play Children's Museum, Inc. Waterbury. matmuseum.org, Mattatuck Museum. West Haven. whmillmuseum.org, 102nd Infantry Regiment Museum DBA West Haven Veterans Museum and Learning Center. Wethersfield. wdsmuseum.org, Webb Dean Stevens Museum. Windsor. ellsworthhomesteaddar.org, Oliver Ellsworth Homestead. Woodstock. roselandcottage.org, Roseland Cottage. District of Columbia Museum websites. Washington. museum.gwu.edu, George Washington University Museum and Textile Museum. hillwoodmuseum.org, Hillwood Estate, Museum and Gardens. kriegermuseum.org, Krieger Museum. nga.gov, National Gallery of Art. dumbartonhouse.org, Enskede Dumbarton House. woodrowwilsonhouse.org, President Woodrow Wilson House. americanart.si.edu, Renwick Gallery of the Smithsonian American Art Museum. americanart.si.edu, Smithsonian American Art Museum. nbm.org, the National Building Museum. doi.gov/Interior Museum, U.S. Department of the Interior Museum. usbg.gov, United States Botanic Garden. cathedral.org, Washington National Cathedral. whitehousehistory.org, White House Historical Association. Delaware Museum websites. Dover. bigsmuseum.org, Biggs Museum of American Art. Hockessin. mtcubacenter.org, MT Cuba Center. Newcastle. reedhouseandgardens.org, George Reed II House and Gardens. Odessa. historicodessa.org, Historic Odessa Foundation. Wilmington. delaware.org, Delaware Art Museum. dehistory.org, Delaware History Museum and the Jane and Littleton Mitchell Center for African American Heritage. delmns.org, Delaware Museum of Nature and Science. nemorsestate.org, Nemours Estate. oldsweets.org, Old Sweets Historic Site. Vintertour. vintertour.org, Vintertour Museum, Garden, and Library. Florida Museum websites. Boca Raton. bocamuseum.org, Boca Raton Museum of Art. bocahistory.org, Schmidt Boca Raton History Museum. Bradenton. bishopscience.org, Bishop Museum of Science and Nature. Coral Gables. coralgablesmuseum.org, Coral Gables Museum. low.miami.edu, Low Art Museum, University of Miami. Coral Springs. coralspringsmuseum.org, Coral Springs Museum of Art. sawgrassnaturiCenter.org, Sawgrass Nature Center and Wildlife Hospital. Davie. olddavyschool.org, Old Davie School Historical Museum. DeLand. moartdeland.org, Museum of Art DeLand. Fort Lauderdale. mods.org, Museum of Discovery and Science. nsuartmuseum.org, NSU Art Museum. Fort Myers. thymag.org, Imag History and Science Center. Gainesville. cademuseum.org, Cade Museum for Creativity and Invention. floridamuseum.ufl.edu, Florida Museum of Natural History. Islamorada. divingmuseum.org, History of Diving Museum. Jacksonville. cummermuseum.org, Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens. Key West. kwest.garden, Key West Tropical Forest and Botanical Garden. mlfisher.org, Mel Fisher Maritime Museum. Maitland. artandhistory.org, Art and History Museums of Maitland. Miami. deeringestate.org, Deering Estate. virginiakeybeachpark.net, Historic Virginia Key Beach Park. pamem.org/N, Perez Art Museum Miami. frostscience.org, Philip and Patricia Frost Museum of Science. vizcaya.org, Vizcaya Museum and Gardens. Naples. Command.org, Golisano Children's Museum. naplesgarden.org, Naples Botanical Garden. Ocala. appletonmuseum.org, Appleton Museum of Art, College of Central Florida. Orlando. thehistorycenter.org, Orange County Regional History Center, Historical Society of Central Florida. omrt.org, Orlando Museum of Art. Ormond Beach. ormondartmuseum.org, Ormond Art Museum and Gardens. Palm Beach. flaglermuseum.us, Flagler Museum. Palmetto. manateecountyagmuseum.com, Manatee County Agricultural Museum. Pompano Beach. pompanohistory.com, Pompano Beach Historical Society and Kester Museums. Quincy. gadsdenarts.org, Gadsden Arts, Inc. Sarasota. ringling.org, John and Mabel Ringling Museum of Art. sarasotaartmuseum.org, Sarasota Art Museum of Ringling College of Art and Design. St. Augustine. staugustinelighthouselighthouse.org, St. Augustine Lighthouse and Maritime Museum. St. Petersburg. thetalee.org, Dolly Museum. thefhm.org, Florida Holocaust Museum. imaginemuseum.com, Imagine Museum. mfastpete.org, Museum of Fine Arts, St. Petersburg. Tallahassee. tallahasseemuseum.org, Tallahassee Museum. Tampa. fmopa.org, Florida Museum of Photographic Arts. plantmuseum.com, Henry Plant Museum. mosi.org, Museum of Science and Industry. sulphurspringsmuseum.org, Sulphur Springs Museum and Heritage Center. tampabayhistorycenter.org, Tampa Bay History Center. tampamacum.org, Tampa Museum of Art. Vero Beach. discoverilk.org, Environmental Learning Center. mckeegarden.org, McKee Botanical Garden. vbmuseum.org, Vero Beach Museum of Art. West Palm Beach. ansg.org, Ann Norton Sculpture Gardens. coxsciencecenter.org, Cox Science Center and Aquarium. norton.org, Norton Museum of Art. palmbeachzoo.org, Palm Beach Zoo and Conservation Society. Winter Park. rollins.edu/rm, Rollins Museum of Art. Georgia Museum websites. Albany. albanymuseum.com, Albany Museum of Art. chaha.org, Chaha Park and Zoo. flintriverquarium.com, Flint Riverquarium, Inc. heritagecenter.org, Thronatiska Heritage Foundation. Athens. georgiamuseum.org, Georgia Museum of Art, University of Georgia. Atlanta. High.org, High Museum of Art. jimmycarterlibrary.gov, Jimmy Carter Presidential Library and Museum. historycolorado.org, Michael C. Carlos Museum. museum.oglethorpe.edu, Oglethorpe University Museum of Art. paper.geatech.edu, Robert C. Williams Museum of Papermaking. Carrollton. Southeastern Quilt and Textile Museum.org, Southeastern Quilt and Textile Museum. Homerville. Huxford.com, Huxford Genealogical Society, Inc. Jefferson. CrawfordLong.org, Crawford Long Museum. Kennesaw. SmithGilbertGardens.com, Smith Gilbert Gardens. Marietta. MariettaHistory.org, Marietta History Center. Milledgeville. gcsu.edu/Andalusia, Andalusia, the home of Flannery O'Connor. gcsu.edu/mansion, Georgia's old governor's mansion. Mountain City. Foxfire.org, Foxfire Fund, Inc. Rome. Berry.edu/Oak Hill, Oak Hill and the Martha Berry Museum. Saudi Nakuchi. Folkpotterymuseum.com, Folk Pottery Museum of Northeast Georgia. Valdosta. TurnerCenter.org, Annette Howell Turner Center for the Arts. ValdostaMuseum.com, Lowndes County Historical Museum. Hawaii Museum websites. Captain Cook. KonaHistorical.org, Kona Historical Society. Hilo. LymanMuseum.org, Lyman Museum. Honolulu. hisam.hawaii.gov, Hawaii State Art Museum. Missionhouses.org, Hawaiian Mission Houses Historic Site and Archives. HonoluluMuseum.org, Honolulu Museum of Art. Obama High Museum at aadcch.org, Obama Hawaiian Africana Museum. Iowa Museum websites. Cedar Falls. cfhistory.org, Cedar Falls Historical Society. Cedar Rapids. crema.org, Cedar Rapids Museum of Art. ncsml.org, National Czech and Slovak Museum and Library. Clinton. AdlerDiscoveryCenter.org, Felix Adler Children's Discovery Center. Coralville. theicm.org, Iowa Children's Museum. Davenport. gauci.org, German American Heritage Center and Museum. Putnam.org, Putnam Museum and Science Center. Decorah. Vesterheim.org, Vesterheim Norwegian American Museum. Des Moines. itelgeorg.org, Des Moines Art Center. Dubuque. dbqart.org, Dubuque Museum of Art. Dyersville. nationalfarmtoymuseum.com, National Farm Toy Museum. Mount Pleasant. oldthreshers.com, Midwest Old Threshers. Muscatine. muscatineartcenter.org, Muscatine Art Center. Pella. pellahistorical.com, Pella Historical Museums. Shenandoah. SciIowa.com, Everly Brothers Childhood Home. Sioux City. Launchpadmuseum.com, Launchpad Children's Museum. Waterloo. gmdistrict.org, Grout Museum District. Waukee. IJS.online, Iowa Jewish Historical Society. West Des Moines. dsmchildrensmuseums.org, Des Moines Children's Museum. Idaho Museum websites. Boise. boiseartmuseum.org, Boise Art Museum. history.idaho.gov, Idaho State Museum. history.idaho.gov/Old Penn, Old Idaho Penitentiary. Idaho Falls. tehartmuseum.org, Art Museum of Eastern Idaho. museumofidaho.org, Museum of Idaho. Pocatello. isu.edu/imnh, Idaho Museum of Natural History. Illinois Museum websites. Addison. addisonadvantage.org/visitors/history_2/index.php, Addison Historical Museum. Aurora. Aurora Regional Fire Museum.org, Aurora Regional Fire Museum. aurora-il.org/372/grand-army-of-the-Republic, Grand Army of the Republic Military Museum. Bloomington. daviddavismansion.org, David Davis Mansion State Historic Site. mchistory.org, McLean County Museum of History. Carthage. churchofjesuschrist.org/learn/historic-sites/Illinois/Carthage-jail ? Carthage jail. Chicago. AmericanWritersMuseum.org, American Writers Museum. Arctic.edu, Art Institute of Chicago. NatureMuseum.org, Chicago Academy of Sciences/Peggy Notabert Nature Museum. ChicagoHistory.org, Chicago History Museum. MCAChicago.org, Museum of Contemporary Art Chicago. PritzkerMilitary.org, Pritzker Military Museum and Library. DrieHouseMuseum.org, Richard H. Driehaus Museum. ShedAquarium.org/community-shed aquarium. CHMoreHomestead.org, Ch. Moore Homestead DeWitt County Museum. CHMoreHomestead.org, DeWitt County Museum Association. Danville. VCUM.org, Vermilion County War Museum. DeKalb. Elwoodhouse.org, Elwood House Museum. Dunlap. WheelsOTime.org, Wheels O Time Museum. Elgin. ElginHistory.org, Elgin History Museum. Evanston. EvanstonHistoryCenter.org, Evanston History Center. MitchellMuseum.org, Mitchell Museum of the American Indian. Galena. GalenaHistory.org, Galena Historical Society. Geneva. GenevaHistoryMuseum.org, Geneva History Museum. Grace Lake. GraceLakeHeritageCenter.com, Grace Lake Heritage Center and Museum. Kankakee. KankakeeCountyMuseum.com, Kankakee County Museum. La Salle. HeglerCarris.org, Hegler-Carris Mansion. Libertyville. LCFPD.org/museum, Dunn Museum. Lisle. Mortonarb.org, Morton Arboretum. Marseilles. SSME.org, Seattle Sutton Marseilles Museum. Mendota. MendotaMuseums.org, Mendota Museum and Historical Society. Mount Vernon. Cedarhurst.org, Cedarhurst Center for the Arts. Murfreesboro. JCHSIL.org, Jackson County Historical Society. Nauvoo. churchofjesuschrist.org/learn/historic-sites/Illinois/historic-Nauvoo ? Historic Nauvoo. Normal. childrensdiscoverymuseum.net, Children's Discovery Museum. Oak Brook. Lizadromuseum.org, Lizadro Museum of Lapidary Art. Oak Lawn. cmoaklawn.org, Children's Museum in Oak Lawn. Ottawa. Reddickmansion.org, Reddick Mansion Association. Peoria. PeoriaPlayhouse.org, Peoria Playhouse Children's Museum. Rock Island. Davenporthouse.org, COL Davenport House Historical Foundation. Rock Island. Carpelles.com, Carpelles Manuscript Library Museum. ArsenalHistoricalSociety.org, Rock Island Arsenal Museum. Rockford. DiscoveryCenterMuseum.org, Discovery Center Museum. VeteransMemorialHall.com, Veterans Memorial Hall and Museum. Rolling Meadows. THE1950SHOUSE.com, Rolling Meadows Historical Society. Skokie. ILHolocaustMuseum.org, Illinois Holocaust Museum. Sugar Grove. AirClassicsMuseum.org, Air Classics Museum of Aviation. Union. GotHistory.org, McHenry County Historical Society and Museum. Utica. Lasalle County Historical Society.org, LaSalle County Historical Society. Indiana Museum websites. Auburn. AutomobileMuseum.org, Auburn Cord-Dwesenberg Automobile Museum. MonroeHistory.org, Monroe County History Center. Elkhart. Ruthmere.org, Ruthmere. Evansville. indianamuseum.org/historic-sites/angel-mountains, State Historic Site. Museum.org, Evansville Museum of Arts, History, and Science. Fishers. ConnorPrairie.org, Connor Prairie. Fort Wayne. fwmoa.org, Fort Wayne Museum of Art. Fountain City. indianamuseum.org/historic-sites/Levi-Catherine-Coffin-House, Levi and Catherine Coffin State Historic Site. indianamuseum.org/historic-sites/Limberlost, State Historic Site. Greencastle. depow.edu/arts-and-culture/arts/Peeler, DePauw Universities, the galleries at Peeler. Indianapolis. TheHistoryOfTexas.com, Itelgeorg Museum of American Indians and Western Art. indianamuseum.org, Indiana State Museum and Historic Sites. imsmuseum.org, Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. VonnegutLibrary.org, Kurt Vonnegut Museum and Library. NCAA Hall of Champions.org, NCAA Hall of Champions Museum. Kokomo. hchistory.org, Howard County Historical Society. LaPorte. LaPorteCountyHistory.org, LaPorte County Historical Society Museum. Madison. indianamuseum.org, Lanier Mansion State Historic Site. Metamora. indianamuseum.org/historic-sites/white-water-canal, Whitewater Canal State Historic Site. Michigan City. Lubeznikcenter.org, Lubeznik Center for the Arts. mchistorical.org, Michigan City Historical Society/Old Lighthouse Museum. Nashville. indianamuseum.org/historic-sites/tc-steel-state-historic-site, Steel State Historic Site. New Albany. indianamuseum.org, Culbertson Mansion State Historic Site. New Harmony. usi.edu/hnh, Historic New Harmony. indianamuseum.org/historic-sites/new-harmony, New Harmony State Historic Site. Rome City. indianamuseum.org/historic-sites/Gene-Stratton-Porter, Gene Stratton Porter State Historic Site. South Bend. HistoryMuseumSB.org, History Museum. StudeBakerMuseum.org, Studebaker National Museum. Wabash. WabashMuseum.org, Wabash County Museum. DaviesCountyHistory.com, Davies County Historical Society Museum. Kansas Museum websites. Abilene. EisenhowerLibrary.gov, Eisenhower Presidential Library and Museum. Burlingame. BurlingameMuseum.com, Burlingame Schuyler Museum. Colby. PrairieMuseum.org, Prairie Museum of Art and History. Dodge City. Boothill.org, Boot Hill Museum, Inc. El Dorado. KansasOilMuseum.org, Butler Historical Society, home of the Kansas Oil Museum. Gardner. GardnerHistoricalMuseum.com, Gardner Historical Museum, Inc. Hutchinson. Cosmo.org, Cosmosphere. La Crosse. Barbedwire.rushcounty.org, Kansas Barbed Wire Museum. Lawrence. SpencerArt.ku.edu, Spencer Museum of Art. Leavenworth. First City Museum slhma.com/c-w-parker-parker-carousel-museum, cw. Parker Carousel Museum. LeavenworthHistory.org, Leavenworth County Historical Society Carroll Mansion Museum. Lincoln. Crispin's Drugstore Museum.com, Crispin's Drugstore Museum. Lyons. CQMuseum.org, Rice County Historical Society/Coronado Quivira Museum. Marysville. Marysville Museum SKS.org, Marshall County Historical Society. Montezuma. StouthMemorialMuseum.org, Stouth Memorial Museum. Olathe. Mahaffey.org, Mahaffey Stagecoach Stop and Farm. Onaga. Facebook.com/people/onaga-historical-society/10006458431657 Onaga Historical Museum. Overland Park. jcprd.com/museum Johnson County Museum. Visit themap.org, Museum at Prairie Fire. St. Mary's. smks.info/museum.html, Indian Pay Station Museum. Salina. salinaartcenter.org, Salina Art Center. Topeka. kansasguardmuseum.org, Museum of the Kansas National Guard. Wichita. botanica.org, Botanica. exploration.org, Exploration Place. kansasaviationmuseum.org, Kansas Aviation Museum. oldcowtown.org, Old Cowtown Museum. wam.org, Wichita Art Museum. wichitahistory.org, Wichita Sedgwick County Historical Museum. Kentucky Museum websites. Covington. bcmuseum.org, Beringer Crawford Museum. Frankfurt. libertyhall.org, Liberty Hall Historic Site. Harrodsburg. shakervillageky.org, Shaker Village of Pleasant Hill. Hopkinsville. museumsofhopkinsville.org, Pennyroyal Area Museum. Lexington. aviationky.org, Aviation Museum of Kentucky. Maysville. thefrickpittsburgh.org, Kentucky Gateway Museum Center. Paducah. riverdiscoverycenter.org, River Discovery Center. Chapter 2. American Museum websites by State. 2. Louisiana Museum websites. Abbeville. lawmilitarymuseum.org, Louisiana Military Museum. Alexandria. themuseum.org, Alexandria Museum of Art. Baton Rouge. lawsem.org, Louisiana Art and Science Museum. lsumoa.org, LSU Museum of Art. New Iberia. bayoutechamuseum.org, Bayou Techa Museum. shadowsonthetecha.org, Shadows on the Techa. New Orleans. nationalwww2museum.org, National World War II Museum. noma.org, New Orleans Museum of Art. scienceforOurCoast.org, Pontchartrain Conservancy's New Canal Lighthouse. suno.edu, Southern University at New Orleans Museum of Art. Main Museum websites. Augusta. mainmillmuseum.org, Maine Armed Forces Museum. Bar Harbor. abaymuseum.org, Abay Museum. barharborhistorical.org, Bar Harbor Historical Society. Bath. mainmaritimemuseum.org, Maine Maritime Museum. Bethel. mainmineralmuseum.org, Maine Mineral and Gem Museum. Brickton. rufusportermuseum.org, Rufus Porter Museum of Art and Ingenuity. Brunswick. pejipscotthistorical.org, Joshua L. Chamberlain Museum. Ellsworth. woodlawnellsworth.org, Woodlawn. Hinckley. gwh.org/lc Bates, L.C. Bates Museum. Kennebunkport. trolleymuseum.org, Seashore Trolley Museum. Lewiston. francocenter.org, Riverfront, Franco Center. facebook.com/Our Heroes Military Museum, Our Heroes Military Museum. Portland. portlandmuseum.org, Portland Museum of Art. Rockland. farnsworthmuseum.org, Farnsworth Art Museum. Skowhegan. mcslibrary.org, Margaret Chase Smith Library. Wiscasset. lincolncountyhistory.org, Lincoln County Historical Association. Yarmouth. yarmouthmehistory.org, Yarmouth History Center. York. oldyork.org, Old York Historical Society. Maryland Museum websites. Annapolis. Amaritime.org, Annapolis Maritime Museum. Annapolis.org, Historic Annapolis. Marylandhall.org, Maryland Hall for the Creative Arts. Baltimore. BoraIL.org, Biano Railroad Museum. Museums.jhu.edu, Evergreen Museum and Library. Museums.jhu.edu, Homewood Museum. Thvalers.org, Walters Art Museum. Berlin. Radcliffehouse.org, Radcliffe House. College Park. collegeparkaviationmuseum.com, College Park Aviation Museum. Colton's Point. Facebook.com/SciMuseum, St. Clements Island Museum. Edgewater. HistoricLondonTown.org, Historic London Town and Gardens. Havre de Grace. BayHouCause.com, BayHouCause Antique Mall History and Beer Museum. Concord Point Lighthouse.org, Friends of Concord Point Lighthouse, Inc. TheLockHouseMuseum.org, Susquehanna Museum of Havre de Grace. Laurel. History.pgparks.com, Montpelier Historic House Museum. Leonardtown. Facebook.com/TheOLD Jail Museum, Old Jail Museum. Lutherville. FireMuseumMD.org, Fire Museum of Maryland. Ocean City. OCMuseum.org, Ocean City Life Saving Station Museum. Piney Point. Facebook.com/1836light, Piney Point Lighthouse Museum. Pocomoke City. Delmarva Discovery Center.org, Delmarva Discovery Museum. Sharpsburg. SharpsburgHMuseumofHistory.com, Sharpsburg Museum of History. St. Mary's City. HSMCDigsHistory.org, Historic St. Mary's City. Westminster. Carroll County Farm Museum.org, Carroll County Farm Museum. Massachusetts Museum websites. Acton. DiscoveryActon.org, Discovery Museum. Adams. Susan B. Anthony Birthplace.org, Susan B. Anthony Birthplace Museum. Andover. Addison.andover.edu, Addison Gallery of American Art. Beverly. HistoricBeverly.net, Historic Beverly. Boston. HowDoYouSeeTheWorld.com, How Do You See the World? Experience and Maparium Globe. ICABoston.org, Institute of Contemporary Art/Boston. GardnerMuseum.org, Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. JFKLibrary.org, John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum. MFA.org, Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. MOS.org, Museum of Science. Boston. NicholsHouseMuseum.org, Nichols House Museum. nscdama.org/properties/William-Hickling-Prescott-House, William Hickling Prescott House. Cambridge. HarvardArtMuseums.org, Harvard Art Museums. Charlestown. USSConstitutionMuseum.org, USS Constitution Museum. Museum of Russian Icons.org, Museum of Russian Icons. Cotuit. CahoonMuseum.org, Cahoon Museum of American Art. Duxbury. Alden.org, Alden House Historic Site. Haverhill. Buttonwoods.org, Buttonwoods Museum. WhittiерBirthplace.org, Whittier Birthplace. Holyoke. Children's Museum Holyoke.org, Children's Museum at Holyoke. Hopkinton. HopArtCenter.org, Hopkinton Center for the Arts. Hyannis. JFKHyannisMuseum.org, John F. Kennedy Hyannis Museum. Jamaica Plain. LORING-GRENOUGH.org, Loring Greenough House. SRMML.org, Scottish Rite Masonic Museum and Library. Lowell. TrolleyMuseum.org/Lowell, National Streetcar Museum at Lowell. Lynn. Garland.org, Grand Army of the Republic Hall and Museum. Marblehead. MarbleheadMuseum.org, Marblehead Museum. Mattapoisett. Mattapoisettmuseum.org, Mattapoisett Museum. Milton. ForbesHouseMuseum.org, Forbes House Museum. Monterey. BidwellHouseMuseum.org, Bidwell House Museum. Nahant. NahantHistory.org, Nahant Historical Society. New Bedford. RJDmuseum.org, Roch Jones Duff House and Garden Museum. Northeaston. CMEaston.org, Children's Museum Easton. Northampton. scma.smith.edu, Smith College Museum of Art. Pittsfield. Berkshirehistory.org, Berkshire County Historical Society. nscdama.org/properties/Dorothy-Quincy-Homestead, Dorothy Quincy Homestead. Salem. pem.org, Peabody Essex Museum. Springfield. Springfieldmuseums.org, Springfield Museums. Stockbridge. nrm.org, Norman Rockwell Museum. Sturbridge. osv.org, Old Sturbridge Village. Swansea. nscdama.org/properties/Martin-House-Farm, Martin House Farm. Taunton. Old Colony History Museum.org, Old Colony History Museum, Ockham. Wenham. wenhammuseum.org, Wenham Museum. Williamstown. clarkart.edu, Clark Art Institute. Worcester. ecotarium.org, Ecotarium. Yarmouth Port. edwardgoreyhouse.org, Edward Gorey House. carlos.emory.edu, Historical Society of Old Yarmouth, Captain Bangs Hallett House. Michigan Museum websites. Albion. barnesfoundation.org, Kids and Stuff Children's Museum. Ann Arbor. lsa.umich.edu/Kelsey, Museum of Archaeology. lsa.umich.edu/ummnh, Museum of Natural History. umm.umich.edu, University of Michigan Museum of Art. Belleville. yankeeairmuseum.org, Yankee Air Museum. Bloomfield Hills. cranbrookartmuseum.org, Cranbrook Art Museum. Charlotte. csamuseum.net, Courthouse Square Association. Coopersville. wilsonarts.com, Coopersville Farm Museum. Dearborn. thehenryford.org, Henry Ford. Detroit. thewright.org, Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. Neuberger.org, Detroit Institute of Arts. mi-sci.org, Michigan Science Center. East Point. mimths.org, Michigan Military Technical and Historical Society. Flint. Applewood.org, Applewood. flintarts.org, Flint Institute of Arts. Grand Haven. tri-citiesmuseum.org, Tri-Cities Historical Museum. Grand Rapids. fordlibrarymmuseum.gov/visit-museum.aspx, Gerald R. Ford Presidential Museum. artmuseumgr.org, Grand Rapids Art Museum. grpm.org, Grand Rapids Public Museum. Hamburg. hamburgmuseum.org, Hamburg Township Museum. Harbor Springs. harborspringshistory.org, Harbor Springs History Museum. Holland. hollandmuseum.org, Holland Historical Trust. Jackson. ellisharpmuseum.org, Ellis Sharp Museum Association of Jackson. mimham.org, Michigan's Military Heritage Museum. Kalamazoo. kalamazoomuseum.org, Kalamazoo Valley Museum. Lansing. impression5.org, Impression 5 Science Center. Leland. leelanauhistory.org, Leelanau Historical Society. Marquette. mqtmaritimemuseum.com, Maritime Museum. Midland. midlandcenter.org, Midland Center for the Arts. Mount Clemens. crockerhousemuseum.org, Macomb County Historical Society, Crocker House Museum and Gardens. Muskegon. lakeshoremuseum.org, Muskegon Heritage Museum of Business and Industry. lakeshoremuseum.org, Muskegon Historic Sites. lakeshoremuseum.org, Muskegon Museum of History and Science. Naubinway. snowmobilemuseum.com, Top of the Lake Snowmobile Museum. Northport. grandtraverselighthouse.com, Grand Traverse Lighthouse Museum. Plymouth. plymouthhistory.org, Plymouth Historical Museum. Rochester. meadowbrookhall.org, Meadowbrook Hall. Rochester Hills. rochesterhills.org/museum, Rochester Hills Museum at Van Hoosen Farm. Saginaw. castlemuseum.org, Castle Museum of Saginaw County History. Thompsonville. mhlegacyartpark.org, Michigan Legacy Art Park. Troy. troyhistoricvillage.org, Troy Historic Village. Minnesota Museum websites. Buffalo. vitauto.com, Vite Automotive Foundation. Comfrey. mnhs.org/Jeffers Petroglyphs, Jeffers Petroglyphs. Curry. endoline.com, Endoline Railroad Park and Museum. Duluth. duluthchildrensmuseum.org, Duluth Children's Museum. glensheen.org, Glensheen. lszooduluth.org, Lake Superior Zoo. dec.org/William-Irvin, William A. Irvin Museum. East Grand Forks. egfheritage.com/home.html, Heritage Village. Elk River. mnhs.org/Kelly Farm, Oliver Kelly Farm. mnhs.org/Forest History, Forest History Center. Little Falls. mnhs.org/Lindbergh, Charles Lindbergh House and Museum. Mankato. cmsouthernmn.org, Children's Museum of Southern Minnesota. rapidandepot.com, Rapidan Heritage Society. mnhs.org/Sibley, Sibley Historic Site. Minneapolis. thebakken.org, Bakken Museum. hennepinhistory.org, Hennepin History Museum. mnhs.org/Mill City, Mill City Museum. timora.org, Museum of Russian Art. walkerart.org, Walker Art Center. wam.umn.edu, Weissmann Art Museum. Moorhead. mnhs.org/Comstock, Comstock House. Mound. Westonka Historical Society.org, Westonka Historical Society. Onamia. mnhs.org/Millax, Millax Indian Museum and Trading Post. Pine City. mnhs.org/Fur Post, Snake River Fur Post. Olmstedhistory.com, History Center of Olmsted County. rochesterartcenter.org, Rochester Art Center. St. Paul. mnhs.org/Fort Snelling, Historic Fort Snelling. mnhs.org/Hillhouse, James J. Hill House. landmarkcenter.org, Landmark Center. mcm.org, Minnesota Children's Museum. mnhs.org/History Center, Minnesota History Center. smm.org, Science Museum of Minnesota. Scandia. gamelgardenmuseum.org, Gamel Garden Museum of Scandia. St. Cloud. sternshistorymuseum.org, Stearns History Museum. Tracy. wheelsacrosstheprairie.org, Wheels Across the Prairie Museum. Wabasha. nationaleaglecenter.org, National Eagle Center. Walker. cascountymuseum.org, Cass County Historical Society. Winona. mmam.org, Minnesota Marine Art Museum. Missouri Museum websites. Ash Grove. mostateparks.com, Nathan and Olive Boone Homestead State Historic Site. mostateparks.com, Mastodon State Historic Site. jchs.org/1859 Jail Museum, 1859 Jail Museum. TrumanLibrary.gov, Harry S. Truman Presidential Library and Museum. churchofjesuschrist.org/learn/historic-sites/missouri/independence-lang=Independence Visitors Center. redhill.org, Trail of Tears State Park. Jefferson City. mostateparks.com, Missouri State Museum. Kansas City. blackarchives.org, Black Archives of Mid-America. mostateparks.com, Thomas Hart Benton Home and Studio State Historic Site. westporthistorical.com, Westport Historical Society and the 1855 Harris Carney House Museum. wonderscope.org, Wonderscope Children's Museum of Kansas City. Kingsville. powellgardens.org, Powell Gardens Botanical Garden. Knob Noster. mostateparks.com, Knob Noster State Park. Lawson. mostateparks.com, Watkins Woolen Mill State Historic Site and State Park. Lee's Summit. leesummitmuseum.com, Lee's Summit History Museum. makioerta-here.com/events-attractions/Missouri-town-living-history-museum, Missouri Town Living History Museum. Liberty. churchofjesuschrist.org/learn/historic-sites/missouri/liberty-jail?, Historic Liberty Jail. New Madrid. mostateparks.com, Hunter Dawson State Historic Site. O'Fallon. kidsandstuff.org, St. Charles County/Mid-America Veterans Museum. Platte City. pchs1882.org/Ben-Farrell-Museum, Ben Farrell Platte County Museum. Revere. mostateparks.com, Battle of Athens State Historic Site. Sibley. makioerta-here.com/events-attractions/historic-sites/Fort-Osage, Fort Osage National Historic Landmark. St. Joseph. sdjosephmo.gov/250/Remington-Nature-Center, Remington Nature Center. St. Louis. camstl.org, Contemporary Art Museum St. Louis. fieldhousemuseum.org, Eugene Fieldhouse Foundation. magichouse.org, Magic House. dmns.org, Pulitzer Arts Foundation. slam.org, St. Louis Art Museum. mostateparks.com, Scott Joplin House State Historic Site. stlholocaustmuseum.org, St. Louis Kaplan Feldman Holocaust Museum. St. Genevieve. mostateparks.com, Felix Vallejo State Historic Site. Mississippi Museum websites. Biloxi. georgeorr.org, Orr O'Keefe Museum of Art. Clarksdale. deltabluesmuseum.org, Delta Blues Museum. Cleveland. grammymuseummms.org, Grammy Museum Mississippi. Holly Springs. marshallcountymuseum.com, Marshall County Historical Museum. welty.mdah.ms.gov, Eudora Welty House and Garden. msmusumart.org, Mississippi Museum of Art. 2mm.mdah.ms.gov, 2 Mississippi Museums. Meridian. msarts.org, Mississippi Arts and Entertainment Experience. Ocean Springs. walterandersonmuseum.org, Walter Anderson Museum of Art. Pascagoula. lapointekrebs.org, La Pointe Krebs House and Museum. Montana Museum websites. Billings. ywhc.org, Western Heritage Center. artmuseum.org, Yellowstone Art Museum. Butte. mbmg.mtech.edu/mineralmuseum/main.asp number gsc.tab = 0, Montana Tech Mineral Museum. Charlo. ninapipezmuseum.org, Nina Pipez Museum of Early Montana. Missoula. Fort Missoula Museum.org, Historical Museum at Fort Missoula. MissoulaArtMuseum.org, Missoula Art Museum. umt.edu/spectrum, Spectrum Discovery Area. Red Lodge. CarbonCountyHistory.com, Carbon County Historical Museum. North Carolina Museum websites. AuroraFossilMuseum.org, Aurora Fossil Museum. Catawba. catawba-history.org/r-sites/Murray's-mill-historic-district, Murray's Mill Historic District. Chapel Hill. Ackland.org, Ackland Art Museum. CharlotteMuseum.org, Charlotte Museum of History. GanttCenter.org, Harvey B. Gantt Center for African American Arts and Culture. WinghavenGardens.org, Winghaven. Durham. Nasher.duke.edu, Nasher Museum of Art at Duke University. Franklin. MaconNCHistorical.com, Macon County Historical Museum. Fuquay-Varina. FUQUAY-VARINA-MUSEUMS.org, Fuquay-Varina Museums. Gastonia. NeonMuseum.org, Sheila Museum of Natural History. Hickory. catawba-history.org/r-sites/Harper-House-Hickory-History-Center, Harper House and Hickory History Center. High Point. highpointmuseum.org, High Point Museum. Kinston. historicsite.nc.gov/all-sites/css-news-governor-caswell-memorial, CSS News Museum. Robeson.k12.nc.us/o/Robeson/page/Robeson-planetarium, Robeson Planetarium and Science Center. Newton. catawbahistory.org, History Museum of Catawba County. Pittsboro. chathamhistory.org, Chatham Historical Museum. Raleigh. haywoodhallevents.org, Haywood Hall House and Gardens. ncmusumofhistory.org, North Carolina Museum of History. Richlands. Onslow County nc.gov/museum, Onslow County Museum. Spencer. ncmdtm.org, North Carolina Museum of Dolls, Toys, and Miniatures. CapeFearMuseum.com, Cape Fear Museum. CameronArtMuseum.org, Louise Wells Cameron Art Museum. Wilson. WilsonWhirligigPark.org, Wallace Simpson Whirligig Park and Museum. WilsonaRTS.com, Wilson Arts. Winston-Salem. CalleDeum.org, CalleDeum. LambMuseum.wfu.edu, Lamb Museum of Anthropology, Wake Forest University. OldSalem.org, Old Salem Museums and Gardens. Raynolda.org, Raynolda House of American Art. North Dakota Museum websites. Abercrombie. history.nd.gov/historic sites/abercrombie/index.html, Fort Abercrombie State Historic Site. Bismarck. gatewaytoscience.org, North Dakota's Gateway to Science. Cooperstown. history.nd.gov/historic sites/Minuteman Missile, Ronald Reagan Minuteman Missile State Historic Site. Fargo. plainsart.org, Plains Art Museum. Washburn. history.nd.gov/historic sites/LCIC, Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center and Fort Mandan. Williston. history.nd.gov/historic sites/McIC, Missouri Yellowstone Confluence Interpretive Center/Fort Buford State Historic Site. Nebraska Museum websites. Aurora. plainsmanmuseum.org, Plainsman Museum. Bellevue. fontanelleforest.org, Fontanelle Forest. sarpycountymuseum.org, Sarpy County Museum. Cozad. roberthenrimuseum.org, Robert Henri Museum and Art Gallery. Crawford. trailside.unl.edu, Trailside Museum of Natural History. Fort Calhoun. wcnemuseum.org, Washington County Museum. Grand Island. StirMuseum.org, Stir Museum. Hastings. HastingsMuseum.org, Hastings Museum. Lincoln Children's Museum.org, Lincoln Children's Museum. Museum.unl.edu, University of Nebraska State Museum Memorial Hall. Omaha. elmuseolatino.org, El Museo Latino. churchofjesuschrist.org/learn/historic-sites/Nebraska/Mormon-trail-winter-lang Mormon Trail Center at Winter Quarters. Royal. Ashfall.unl.edu, Ashfall Fossil Beds State Historical Park. New Hampshire Museum websites. Concord. Starhop.com, McAuliffe Shepherd Discovery Center. nhhistory.org, New Hampshire Historical Society. childrens-museum.org, Children's Museum of New Hampshire. Enfield. shakermuseum.org, Enfield Shaker Museum. Exeter. independencemuseum.org, American Independence Museum. Hillsborough. nhstateparks.org, Franklin Pierce Homestead State Historic Site. Holderness. nhnature.org, Squam Lakes Natural Science Center. Keene. hsccnh.org, Historical Society of Cheshire County. Courier.org, Courier Museum of Art. manchesterhistoric.org, Manchester Historic Association's Millyard Museum. Moulton Borough. castleintheclouds.org, Castle in the Clouds. Nashua. NashuaHistoricalSociety.org, Nashua Historical Society. New London. wfkicehouse.org, Icehouse Museum. Portsmouth. moffatlad.org, Moffat Lad House and Garden. Rye. seacoastsciencecentre.org, Seacoast Science Center. Warner. nhtelephone-museum.org, New Hampshire Telephone Museum. Wolfboro. wrightmuseum.org, Wright Museum of World War II. New Jersey Museum websites. Cape May. capemayhistory.org, the Greater Cape May Historical Society. Cape May Courthouse. cmcmuseum.org, Cape May County Historical and Genealogical Society. Easthampton. smithvillemansion.org, Friends of the Mansion at Smithville. Freehold. monmouthhistory.org, Monmouth County Historical Association. Galloway. longportpubliclibrary.org/Historical Society, Longport Historical Museum. Homedale. njvvmf.org, New Jersey Vietnam Veterans Memorial Foundation. Island Heights. petomuseum.org, John F. Peto Studio Museum. Lincroft. monmouthmuseum.org, Monmouth Museum. metsy.org, Museum of Early Trades and Crafts. Matawan. thomas-warne-museum.com, Thomas Warne Museum and Library. Mauricetown. Mauricetownhistoricalsociety.org, Mauricetown Historical Society. Millville. dcgallerystudio.com, DC Gallery and Studio. wheatonarts.org, Wheaton Arts and Cultural Center. Montclair. montclairhistory.org, Crane House and Historic YWCA. Morristown. morrisparks.net/index.php/parks/Fosterfields, Fosterfields Living Historical Farm. mcculloch-hall.org, McCulloch Hall Historical Museum. Mount Holly. prisonmuseum.net, Historic Burlington County Prison Museum. Newark. newarkmusumart.org, Newark Museum of Art. Piscataway. Middlesex County, New Jersey.gov/history, Cornelius Low House. Middlesex County, New Jersey.gov/history, East Jersey Old Town. Princeton. artmuseum.princeton.edu, Princeton University Art Museum. Summers Point. Atlantic County Historical Society NewJersey.org, Atlantic County Historical Society. Somerville. nj.gov/dep/parks and forests/historic/wallace/utch.html, Wallace House and Old Dutch Parsonage State Historic Sites. Trenton. statemuseum.nj.gov, New Jersey State Museum. Wall. Infoage.org, Infoage Science and History Museums. New Mexico Museum websites. Albuquerque. nmnaturalhistory.org, New Mexico Museum of Natural History and Science. cabq.gov/art-sculpture/albuquerque-museum, Albuquerque Museum. Alcalde. nmhistoricsite.org/los-luceros, Los Luceros Historic Site. El Prado. millicent-rogers.org, Millicent Rogers Museum. Las Cruces. nmfarmandranchmuseum.org, New Mexico Farm and Ranch Heritage Museum. Mimbres. Mimbrasculptureheritagesite.org, Imogen F. Wilson Education Foundation. Radium Springs. nmhistoricsite.org/Fort-Selden, Fort Selden Historic Site. Santa Fe. Golondrinas.org, El Rancho de las Golondrinas. GOKM.org, Georgia O'Keeffe Museum. Moifa.org, Museum of International Folk Art. Nevada Museum websites. Boulder City. BoulderRailroadMuseum.org, Nevada State Railroad Museum, Boulder City. Carson City. CarsonNVMuseum.org, Nevada State Museum. CarsonRailroadMuseum.org, Nevada State Railroad Museum. Elko. MuseumElko.org, Northeastern Nevada Museum. Ely. ElyRailroadMuseum.org, East Ely Railroad Depot Museum. Henderson. Clark County NV.gov/government/departments/parks_recreation/cultural_division/museum/clark_museum.php, Clark County Museum. Las Vegas. BurlesqueHall.com, Burlesque Hall of Fame. St. Charles County Veterans Museum.org, Neon Museum Las Vegas. Las Vegas NVMuseum.org, Nevada State Museum Las Vegas. SpringsPreserve.org, Springs Preserve. Overton. LostCityMuseum.org, Lost City Museum. Reno. AutoMuseum.org, National Automobile Museum. NVHistoricalSociety.org, Nevada Historical Society. www.nevadart.org, Nevada Museum of Art. Sparks. SparksMuseum.org, Sparks Heritage Museum. New York Museum websites. ShakerHeritage.org, Shaker Heritage Society. USSSlater.org, USS Slater, Destroyer Escort Historical Museum. Ballston Spa. NationalBottleMuseum.org, National Bottle Museum. Beacon. DiaArt.org, Dia Beacon. Bethel. BethelWoodsCenter.org, Bethelwoods Center for the Arts. Bridgehampton. CMEE.org, Children's Museum of the East End. Bronx. BronxChildren'sMuseum.org, Bronx Children's Museum. Derfna.org, Derfner Judaica Museum. NibG.org, New York Botanical Garden. Brooklyn. HarborDefenseMuseum.com, Harbor Defense Museum. BuffaloAKG.org, Buffalo Ak Art Museum. BuffaloGardens.com, Buffalo and Erie County Botanical Gardens. ScienceBuff.org, Buffalo Museum of Science. BuffaloNavalPark.org, Buffalo Naval Park Committee. Canajoharie. ArkelMuseum.org, Arkel Museum. Chittenango. AllThingsOunce.org, All Things Ounce Museum. Cold Spring Harbor. PreservationLongisland.org, Preservation Long Island. CSHWhalingMuseum.org, Whaling Museum of Cold Spring Harbor. Corning. RockwellMuseum.org, Rockwell Museum. cmog.org, Corning Museum of Glass. East Aurora. RoycroftCampusCorp.com, Roycroft Campus Corporation. Garden City. CradleOfAviation.org, Cradle of Aviation Museum. Lichem.org, Long Island Children's Museum. NCFireMuseum.org, Nassau County Firefighters Museum. Garrison. Boscobel.org, Boscobel House and Gardens. Hammond's Sport. FLBM.org, Finger Lakes Boating Museum. Hempstead. Hofstra.edu/museum, Hofstra University Museum of Art. House Cave. IroquoisMuseum.org, Iroquois Museum. Huntington. Heckscher.org, Heckscher Museum of Art. Ithaca. TheHistoryCenter.net, History Center in Tompkins County. MuseumoftheEarth.org, Museum of the Earth at the Paleontological Research Institution. ScienceCenter.org, Science Center. Jamestown. FentonHistoryCenter.org, Fenton History Center. Kinderhook. CCHSNewYork.org, Columbia County Historical Society. Kingston. HRMM.org, Hudson River Maritime Museum. Lockport. NiagaraHistory.org, Erie Canal Discovery Center. NiagaraHistory.org, Niagara History Center. Malone. FranklinHistory.org, House of History, Franklin County Historical and Museum Society. New Paltz. HistoricRosemont.org, Historic Huguenot Street. New Windsor. StormKing.org, Storm King Art Center. New York. AMNH.org, American Museum of Natural History. Guggenheim.org, Guggenheim Museum. IntrepidMuseum.org, Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum. TheJewishMuseum.org, Jewish Museum. TheMorgan.org, Morgan Library and Museum. Fitenique.edu/museum, Museum at Fit. MadMuseum.org, Museum of Arts and Design. PaleyCenter.org, Paley Center for Media. Posterhouse.org, Poster House. SocietyIllustrators.org, Society of Illustrators. Guggenheim.org, Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum. Whitney.org, Whitney Museum of American Art. North Tonawanda. CarouselMuseum.org, Herschel Carousel Factory Museum. Norwich. ChenangoHistorical.org, Chenango County Historical Society and Museum. Ogdensburg. FrederickRemington.org, Frederick Remington Art Museum. Old Westbury. OldWestburyGardens.org, Old Westbury Gardens, Inc. Oneida. OneidaCommunity.org, Oneida Community Mansion House. Oyster Bay. RaynhamHallMuseum.org, Raynham Hall Museum. Palmyra. churchofjesuschrist.org/learn/historic-new-york/grandin-building-lang=Grandin Book of Mormon publication site. churchofjesuschrist.org/learn/historic-site/new-york/lang=lang=Hill Cumorah. Wilton. wiltonhistorical.org/about/museum, Wilton Heritage Museum. Yonkers. hrm.org, Hudson River Museum. Ohio Museum websites. Akron. uakron.edu/Hauer House Museum, Hauer House Museum. Archbold. soldervillage.org, Solder Village. Batavia. tswm.org, Tri-State Warbird Museum. Beechwood. maltzmuseum.org, Maltz Museum of Jewish Heritage. mckinleymuseum.org, McKinley Presidential Library and Museum. ashtonhousemuseum.com, Ashton House Museum. Cincinnati. americansignmuseum.org, American Sign Museum. CINCinnatiArtMuseum.org, Cincinnati Art Museum. StowhouseCincy.org, Harriet Beecher Stowe House. TaftMuseum.org, Taft Museum of Art. WRHS.org, Cleveland History Center. DunhamTavern.org, Dunham Tavern Museum. MochaCleveland.org, Museum of Contemporary Art, Cleveland. Columbus. ColumbusMuseum.org, Columbus Museum of Art. NationalVMM.org, National Veterans Memorial and Museum. WexArts.org, Wexner Center for the Arts. Coshocton. JHMuseum.org, Johnson Humrick House Museum. Dayton. Allwood.audubon.org, Allwood Audubon. DaytonaRT.org, Dayton Art Institute. Denison. DenisonDepot.org, Denison Railroad Depot Museum. DoverHistory.org, Reeves Museum. Elyria. LCHS.org, Hickory's Museum. Fairborn. MVMHM.com, Miami Valley Military History Museum. Fairport Harbor. Fairport Harbor Lighthouse.org, Fairport Harbor Historical Society. Fairport Harbor Lighthouse.org, Fairport Harbor Marine Museum. Hiram. churchofjesuschrist.org/learn/historic-sites/ohio/johnson-home Kettering. playkettering.org/rosewood, Rosewood Arts Center. Kirtland. churchofjesuschrist.org/learn/historic-sites/ohio/historic-lang=lang=historic Kirtland. Lancaster. AHA4KIDS.org, AHA. A Hands-on Adventure, a Children's Museum. Lorraine. LorraineHistory.org, Lorraine Historical Society. MariettaMuseums.org, Marietta Museums. Massillon. MassillonMuseum.org, Massillon Museum. SpringHillHistoryChome.org, Spring Hill Historic Home. Milan. MilanHistory.org, Milan Historical Museum. HighSeaMuseum.org, National High-Sea Glass Museum. ATTHeWorks.org, Works, Ohio Center for History, Art and Technology. North Canton. MapsAirMuseum.org, Maps Air Museum. Oberlin. OberlinHeritageCenter.org, Oberlin Heritage Center. Sandusky. SanduskyMaritime.org, Maritime Museum of Sandusky. Steubenville. OldFortsDEUben.com, Historic Fort Steuben. Sugar Creek. Warther.org, David Warther Carvings and Gift Shop. Toledo. ToledoMuseum.org, Toledo Museum of Art. BrucknerNaturiCenter.com, Bruckner Nature Center. Urbana. ChampaignAviationMuseum.org, Champaign Aviation Museum. Wapakoneta. ArmstrongMuseum.org, Armstrong Air and Space Museum Associations Inc. Warren. PackardMuseum.org, National Packard Museum. Oklahoma Museum websites. Ardmore. GSHM.org, Greater Southwest Historical Museum. Bristow. BristowHistory.org, Bristow Historical Society Inc. Chickasha. ChickasawCountry.com/history-culture/Grady-county-historical-society-museum, Grady County Historical Society. Claremore. ClaremoreMo.org, Claremore Museum of History. Duncan. ONTHeChisholmTrail.com, Chisholm Trail Heritage Center. Edmond. EdmondHistory.org, Edmond Historical Society and Museum. Fort Sill. Sill. Army.mil/fs-museum, Fort Sill National Historic Landmark and Museum. Grove. HAR-BERVILLAGE.com, Harbor Village Museum. Locust Grove. ROMPoetry.com, Rural Oklahoma Museum of Poetry. DobsonMuseum.com, Dobson Museum and Home. Norman. NormanMuseum.org, Moore-Lindsay Historical House Museum. Oklahoma City. AmericanBanjoMuseum.com, American Banjo Museum. www.history.org/western-district-of-Oklahoma, Historical Society of the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Oklahoma. NationalCowboyMuseum.org, National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. OKCMOA.com, Oklahoma City Museum of Art. OklahomaContemporary.org, Oklahoma Contemporary Arts Center. OklahomaHoff.com/history-mission, Oklahoma Hall of Fame Gaylord Pickens Museum. OKHistory.org, Oklahoma History Center. OklahomaRailwayMuseum.org, Oklahoma Railway Museum. PawneeBills.org, Pawnee Bill Ranch and Museum. Shawnee. MGMOA.org, Mabigara Museum of Art. Tahlequah. UKB-NSN.gov, John Hare Cultural Center and Kituwa Museum. Tulsa. Philbrook.org, Philbrook Museum of Art. JewishMuseumTulsa.org, Sherwin Miller Museum of Jewish Art. TulsaHistory.org, Tulsa Historical Society. Weatherford. StaffordMuseum.org, Stafford Air and Space Museum. Wookah. SeminoleNationMuseum.org, Seminole Nation Museum. Wynwood. Facebook.com/The Eskridge Hotel Museum. Wynwood Historical Society, Wynwood Historical Society. Oregon Museum websites. mostateparks.com, Albany Regional Museum. Astoria. CRMM.org, Columbia River Maritime Museum. AuroraColony.org, Old Aurora Colony Museum. Bend. Deschutes.history.org, Deschutes Historical Museum. Cannon Beach. CBHistory.org, Cannon Beach History Center and Museum. Central Point. CraterRock.com, Crater Rock Museum. Clackamas. OregonMilitaryMuseum.org, Oregon Military Museum. Coos Bay. CoosHistory.org, Coos History Museum. Corvallis. BentonCountyMuseums.org, Corvallis Museum. Eugene. EugeneScienceCenter.org, Eugene Science Center. SMJHouse.org, Shelton McMurphy Johnson House. Oregon Coast Military Museum.com, Oregon Coast Military Museum. Gresham. GreshamHistorical.org, Gresham Historical Society. Hillsboro. RiceNorthwestMuseum.org, Rice Northwest Museum of Rocks and Minerals. Hood River. HoodRiverHistoryMuseum.org, History Museum of Hood River County. McMinnville. EvergreenMuseum.org, Evergreen Aviation and Space Museum. Oregon City. ClackamasHistory.org, Museum of the Oregon Territory. Pendleton. HeritageStationMuseum.org, Heritage Station Museum. PendletonAirMuseum.com, Pendleton Air Museum. Philomath. BentonCountyMuseums.org, Philomath Museum. JAMO.org, Japanese American Museum of Oregon. OHS.org, Oregon Historical Society. PittockMansion.org, Pittock Mansion. PortlandArtMuseum.org, Portland Art Museum. Willamette.edu/go/hfma, Holly Ford Museum of Art. Tillamook. TCPM.org, Tillamook County Pioneer Museum. Troutdale. TroutdaleHistory.org, Troutdale Historical Society. UCMuseumOregon.com, Union County Museum Society. Pennsylvania Museum websites. Allentown. LCHS.Museum, Lehigh Valley Heritage Museum. Avella. HeinzHistoryCenter.org/visit/Meadowcroft, Meadowcroft Rock Shelter and Historic Village. Bloomsburg. The-childrens-museum.org, Bloomsburg Children's Museum. Boyertone. Boyertonemuseum.org, Boyertone Museum of Historic Vehicles. Bradford. marylandhor.org, Maryland Horn Museum and Exhibit Center. Bryn Mawr. Harritonhouse.org, Harriton Historic House and Park. Chadsford. brandywine.org/museum, Brandywine Museum of Art. sandersonmuseum.org, Christian C. Sanderson Museum. Chambersburg. franklinhistorical.org, Franklin County Historical Society Old Jail Museum. Doylestown. missionerartmuseum.org, James A. Missioner Art Museum. Easton. Canals.org, National Canal Museum. Ephrata. ephratacloister.org, Ephrata Cloister. Erie. eriechildrensmuseum.org, Experience Children's Museum. eriehistory.org, Hagen History Center. Falsington. historicfalsington.org, Historic Falsington, Inc. Fort Washington. historichopelodge.org, Friends of Hope Lodge. Glen Mills. newlandgristmill.org, Newland Grist Mill. Harrisburg. pnfm.org, Pennsylvania National Fire Museum. statemusumpa.org, State Museum of Pennsylvania. Horsham. grampark.org, Graham Park. Jeanette. bushyrunbattlefield.com, Bushy Run Battlefield. hansonhouse.org, Hands-on House Children's Museum. lancastersciencefactory.org, Lancaster Science Factory. Lewisburg. lewisburgchildrensmuseum.org, Lewisburg Children's Museum. Ligonier. lvrra.org, Ligonier Valley Railroad Museum. Makunji. makunji.org, Makunji Historical Society. Malvern. wardensherrickmuseum.org, Warden Escherich Museum. Meadville. baldwinreynolds.org, Baldwin Reynolds House Museum. Nazareth. moravianhistory.org, Moravian Historical Society. New Hope. buckskids.org, Bucks County Children's Museum. Newtown Square. colonialplantation.org, Colonial Pennsylvania Plantation. Northumberland. joseph-priestley-house.org, Friends of Joseph Priestley House. Oakland Township. churchofjesuschrist.org/learn/historic-site/pennsylvania/priesthood-site?lang=lang, priesthood restoration site. Oil City. venangomuseum.org, Venango Museum of Art, Science, and Industry. Percy. pearlsbuck.org, Pearl S. Buck House. Philadelphia. amphilsoc.org, American Philosophical Society Museum. barnesfoundation.org, Barnes Foundation. constitutioncenter.org, National Constitution Center. Penn.museum, Penn Museum. philadelphiamuseum.org, Philadelphia Museum of Art. pleasetouchmuseum.org, Please Touch Museum. Stenton.org, Stenton Museum. woodmereartmuseum.org, Woodmere Art Museum. Pittsburgh. pittsburghkids.org, Children's Museum of Pittsburgh. bigsmuseum.org, Frick Pittsburgh. heinzhistorycenter.org, Senator John Heinz History Center. Reading. barkshistory.org, Barks History Center Museum and Research Library. State College. discoveryspace.org, Discovery Space of Central PA. Strasbourg. rrmusumpa.org, Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania. Ulysses TWP. lumbermuseum.org, Pennsylvania Lumber Museum. pawtrolley.org, Pennsylvania Trolley Museum. Waynesboro. renfrewmuseum.org, Renfrew Museum and Park. Westchester. American Helicopter.museum, American Helicopter Museum and Education Center. Wyoming. countyofbarks.com/parks, Barks County Heritage Center, Barks County Parks and Recreation Department. yorkhistorycenter.org, York County History Center. Puerto Rico Museum websites. Ponce. museoarteponce.org, Museo de Arte de Ponce. San Juan. ecoexploratorio.org, Ecoexploratorio, Museo de Ciencias de Puerto Rico. Rhode Island Museum websites. bristolartmuseum.org, Bristol Art Museum. coggeshallfarm.org, Coggeshall Farm Museum. Newport. tennisfame.com, International Tennis Hall of Fame. usnwc.edu/nwc-museum, Naval War College Museum. newportartmuseum.org, Newport Art Museum. newportrestoration.org, Newport Restoration Foundation. thsailingmuseum.org, Sailing Museum. Providence. rihs.org, Rhode Island Historical Society, John Brown House Museum. risdmuseum.org, RISD Museum. South Carolina Museum websites. Beaufort. historicbeaufort.org/John-Mark-Verdier-House, Historic Beaufort Foundation's John Mark Verdier House Museum. Bennettsville. marlboromuseum.com, Marlboro County Museum. Bishopville. scotton.org, South Carolina Cotton Museum. Charleston. powdermagazine.org, Powder Magazine Museums. Columbia. columbiamuseum.org, Columbia Museum of Art. historiccolumbia.org, Historic Columbia. crr.sc.gov, SC Confederate Relic Room and Military Museum. kaminskymuseum.org, Kaminsky House Museum. Greenville. upcountryhistory.org, Upcountry History Museum. McConnell's. chmuseums.org/Bratonsville, Historic Bratonsville. North Charleston. northcharlestonfiremuseum.org, North Charleston Fire Museum. Rock Hill. chmuseums.org/children's, Main Street Children's Museum. chmuseums.org/Myco, Museum of York County. Spartanburg. spartanburghistory.org, Spartanburg County Historical Association. Sumter. sumtercountymuseum.org, Sumter County Museum. South Dakota Museum websites. Brookings. southdakotaaartmuseum.com, South Dakota Art Museum. Yankton. meadbuilding.org, Mead Museum. Tennessee Museum websites. Chattanooga. huntermuseum.org, Hunter Museum of American Art. towingmuseum.com, International Towing Museum. Clarksville. customshousemuseum.org, Customs House Museum and Cultural Center. Gallatin. pulitzerarts.org, Historic Rosemont. Goodlettsville. Visit goodlettsville.com, City of Goodlettsville, Historic Manskers Station. Greenville. nps.gov/Anja, Andrew Johnson NHS. Knoxville. easttnhistory.org, Museum of East Tennessee History. Memphis. brooksmuseum.org, Memphis Brooks Museum of Art. moshmemphis.com, Memphis Museum of Science and History. metalmuseum.org, Metal Museum. woodruff-fontaine.org, Woodruff Fontaine House Museum. cheekwood.org, Cheekwood Estate and Gardens. fristartmuseum.org, Frist Art Museum. nashvilleparthenon.com, Parthenon. historictravelersrest.org, Travelers Rest Historic House Museum. Oak Ridge. childrensmuseumofOakridge.org, Children's Museum of Oak Ridge. robcohistoricalsociety.com, Robertson County History Museum. Townsend. gsmheritagecenter.org, Great Smoky Mountains Heritage Center. Union City. discoveryparkofamerica.com, Discovery Park of America. Texas Museum websites. 12THARMOREDDIVISIONMUSEUM.com, 12th Armored Division Memorial Museum. thegracemuseum.org, Grace Museum. theojac.org, Old Jail Art Center. Amarillo. dhdc.org, Don Harrington Discovery Center. Texas AIRONSpaceMuseum.org, Texas Air and Space Museum. Austin. BlantonMuseum.org, Blanton Museum of Art. ARmuseum.com, Bullock Texas State History Museum. Wildflower.org, Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center. Landmarks.utexas.edu, Landmarks, Public Art Program of University of Texas at Austin. lbjlibrary.org, LBJ Presidential Library and Museum. mexic-artemuseum.org, Mexicarte Museum. nchmuseum.org, Neil Cochran House Museum. Bandera. frontiertimesmuseum.org, Frontier Times Museum. Beaumont. Spindletop.org, Spindletop Gladys City Boomtown Museum. Bonham. Visit samrayburnhouse.com, Sam Rayburn House State Historic Site. Brownsville. Brownsvillehistory.org, Brownsville Historical Association. Brownwood. browncountymuseum.org, Brown County Museum of History, Inc. Kenyon. panhandleplains.org, Panhandle Plains Historical Museum. chandlertx.com/542/museum-visitors-center, Chandler Museum and Visitors Center. Chapel Hill. chapelhillhistoricalsociety.com, Chapel Hill Historical Society. Cleburne. cleburnermuseum.net, Cleburne Railroad Museum. leylandmuseum.net, Leyland Museum. Clifton. boskmuseum.org, Bosk Museum. College Station. AmericanGIMuseum.org, Museum of the American GI. Comanche. ComancheCountyTXMuseum.com, Comanche County Historical Society and Museum. Corpus Christi. ArtCenteRCC.org, Art Center of Corpus Christi. ArtMuseumOfSouthTexas.org, Art Museum of South Texas. Corsicana. PierceMuseum.com, Pierce Museum. Dallas. DHHRM.org, Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum. FlightMuseum.com, Frontiers of Flight Museum. BushCenter.org, George W. Bush Presidential Museum. MeadowsMuseumDallas.org, Meadows Museum. NasherSculptUReCenter.org/visit/plan-a-visit, Nasher Sculpture Center. JFK.org, 6th Floor Museum at Dealey Plaza. Denison. Visit EisenhowerBirthplace.com, Eisenhower Birthplace State Historic Site. Edinburgh. MostHistory.org, Museum of South Texas History. El Paso. Visit McGoffinHome.com, McGoffin Home State Historic Site. Fort Sam Houston. history.army.mil/museum/fshmuseum/index.html, Fort Sam Houston Museum. Fort Worth. cartermuseum.org, Amon Carter Museum of American Art. fortworthaviationmuseum.com, Fort Worth Aviation Museum. fwmuseum.org, Fort Worth Museum of Science and History. kimballart.org, Kimball Art Museum. logcabinvillage.org, Log Cabin Village. themodern.org, Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth. nmwham.org, National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum. Galveston. thebryanmuseum.org, Bryan Museum. galvestoncountyhistory.org, Galveston County Museum. Garland. garlandtx.gov/358/landmark-museum, Heritage Crossing, Garland Landmark Museum. Gatesville. texastimetravel.com/directory/coriel-museum-and-historical-center, Coriel Museum and Historical Center. Glen Rose. barnardsmill.org, Barnards Mill and Art Museum. hillcollege.edu/museum/index.html, Hill College, Texas Heritage Museum. Houston. buffalosoldier-museum.org, Buffalo Soldiers National Museum. cmhouston.org, Children's Museum Houston. hc.edu/museum/dunham-bible-museum, Dunham Bible Museum, Houston Christian University. thehealthmuseum.org, Health Museum. mfah.org, Museum of Fine Arts, Houston. samhoustonmemorialmuseum.com, Sam Houston Memorial Museum and Republic of Texas Presidential Library. Irving. irvingarchivesandmuseum.com, Irving Archives and Museum. Museum of Measurement and Time.org, Museum of Measurement and Time. Katy. facebook.com/Johnny Nelson Katy Heritage Museum, Johnny Nelson Katy Heritage Museum. cityofkaty.com/visitors/museums, MKT Railroad Depot Museum. Kerrville. museumofwesternart.com, Museum of Western Art. king-ranch.com/museum, King Ranch Inc. Crum. crumheritagemuseum.com, Crum Heritage Museum. sanjacinto-museum.org, San Jacinto Museum and Battlefield. Laredo. webheritage.org, Webb County Heritage Foundation. Longview. greghistorical.org, Gregg County Historical Museum. Lubbock. buddyhollycenter.org, Buddy Holly Center. lubbocklake.ttu.edu, Lubbock Lake Landmark. silentwingsmuseum.com, Silent Wings Museum. McAllen. thymazonline.org, International Museum of Art and Science. Mesquite. historicmesquite.org, Florence Ranch Homestead. historicmesquite.org, Historic Mesquite, Inc. historicmesquite.org, Opal Lawrence Historical Park. museumsw.org, Museum of the Southwest. petroleummuseum.org, Permian Basin Petroleum Museum. Mingus. ecoxploratorio.org, W. K. Gordon Museum and Research Center. Mont Belvieu. bhisd.net, Hall of History, Barbers Hill ISD and City of Mont Belvieu. New Braunfels. sophienberg.com, Sophienberg Museum and Archives. Nocona. talesandtrails.org, Tales and Trails Museum. Paris. Visit sambelmaxihouse.com, Sam Bell Maxey House State Historic Site / Texas Historical Commission. Pittsburgh. pittsburghtexasmuseum.org, Northeast Texas Rural Heritage Museum. Port Aransas. portaransasmuseum.org, Port Aransas Museum and Farley Boat Works. Port Arthur. Museum of the Gulf Coast.org, Museum of the Gulf Coast. San Angelo. fortconco.com, Fort Conco NHL. San Antonio. briscoemuseum.org, Briscoe Western Art Museum. Visit casaNavarro.com, Casa Navarro State Historic Site. Contemporariesa.org, Contemporary at Blue Star. samuseum.org, San Antonio Museum of Art. villafinale.org, Villa Finale, Museum and Gardens. San Augustine. Visit missiondolores.com, Mission Dolores Texas Historical Commission. San Benito. texasconjuntomusic.org, Texas Conjunto Music Hall of Fame and Museum. Sanger. facebook.com/Sangera Area Historical Society, Sanger Area Historical Society Museum. Seymour. BaylorCountyMuseum.wixsite.com/Baylor County Museum, Baylor County Historical Museum. Sheffield. Tarleton.edu/Gordon Center, Fort Lancaster, Texas Historical Commission. Sinton. SintonMuseum.com, Sinton Historical Museum. Taylor. MoodyMuseum.com, Moody Museum. Temple. TempleArarham.org, Temple Railroad and Heritage Museum. Tyler. Texas African American Museum.org, Texas African American Museum. Vernon. RRVmuseum.org, Red River Valley Museum. Wichita Falls. WFMA.msutexas.edu, Wichita Falls Museum of Art at MSU Texas. Utah Museum websites. Beaver. churchofjesuschrist.org/learn/historic-site/utah/cove-fort?lang=cove Fort. Brigham City. brighamcitymuseum.org, Brigham City Museum of Art and History. Moab. moabmuseum.org, Moab Museum. Ogden. treehousemuseum.org, Treehouse Children's Museum. Price. eastern.usu.edu/museum, Utah State University Eastern Prehistoric Museum. Santa Clara. churchofjesuschrist.org/learn/historic-sites/utah/jacob-home?lang=Hamblin home. St. George. churchofjesuschrist.org/learn/historic-sites/utah/brigham-young-home?lang=Brigham Young Winter Home and Office. sgchildrensmuseum.org, St. George Children's Museum. churchofjesuschrist.org/learn/historic-sites/utah/st-tabernacle?lang=St. George Tabernacle. Virginia Museum websites. alexandriava.gov/black history, Alexandria Black History Museum. alexandriava.gov/lyceum, Alexandria History Museum at the Lyceum. novaparks.com/parks/carlisle-house-historic-park, Carlisle House Historic Park. alexandriava.gov/freedom house, Freedom House Museum. alexandriava.gov/friendship firehouse, Friendship Firehouse Museum. alexandriava.gov/Gadsby's Tavern, Gadsby's Tavern Museum. alexandriava.gov/apothecary, Stabler Leadbeater Apothecary Museum. Appomattox. acum.org, American Civil War Museum, Appomattox. Bedford. dday.org, National D-Day Memorial. pwcva.gov/department/preservation/Brentsville-Courthouse-Historic-Center, Brentsville Courthouse Historic Center. Brook Neal. redhill.org, Patrick Henry Memorial Foundation. Charlottesville. highland.org, James Monroe's Highland. vadm.org, Virginia Discovery Museum. Chester. henricus.org, Henricus Historical Park. Culpeper. culpepermuseum.com, Museum of Culpeper History. Dumfries. historicdumfriesva.org, Historic Dumfries, Virginia, Inc. Falmouth. garymelchers.org, Gary Melchers Home and Studio. Farmville. lcva.longwood.edu, Longwood Center for the Visual Arts. Fredericksburg. jamesmonroemuseum.umw.edu, James Monroe Museum. washingtonheritagemuseums.org, Washington Heritage Museums. Hampton. hamptonhistorymuseum.org, Hampton History Museum. Leesburg. morvenpark.org, Morven Park. vmi.edu/museums-and-archives/Jackson-House-Museum, Jackson House Museum. Lorton. gunstonhall.org, George Mason's Gunston Hall. Lorton. workhousearts.org/Lucy-Burns-Museum, Lucy Burns Museum. Lynchburg. poplarforest.org, Thomas Jefferson's Poplar Forest. Manassas. pwcva.gov/department/historic-preservation/ben-lomond-historic-site, Ben Historic Martinsville. vmnh.net, Virginia Museum of Natural History. Middletown. Belgrove.org, Belgrove Plantation. New Market. vmi.edu/museums-archives/Virginia-museum-of-the-Civil-War, Virginia Museum of the Civil War/New Market Battlefield State Historical Park. Orange. The James Madison Museum.net, James Madison Museum of Orange County Heritage. PortsmouthArtCenter.com, Portsmouth Art and Cultural Center. Reedville. rfmuseum.org, Reedville Fishermen's Museum. Richmond. acum.org, American Civil War Museum. vmfa.museum, Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. Roanoke. taubmanmuseum.org, Taubman Museum of Art. Smithfield. stluke'smuseum.org, St. Luke's Historic Church and Museum. Stratford. stratfordhall.org, Stratford Hall Historic Preserve, Rolma. Verona. 116thfoundation.org/museum, 29th Division Museum. Virginia Beach. operationsmile.org/ilc, Anthony L. and Hyde S. Burgess Interactive Learning Center at Operation Smile. Warsaw. Menniken.org, Menniken. Williamsburg. colonialwilliamsburg.org/explore/art-museums, Art Museums of Colonial Williamsburg. Woodbridge. pwcva.gov/department/historic-preservation/Ripon-Lodge, Ripon Lodge Historic Site. Wytheville. facebook.com/octagonmanzionet585, Octagon Mansion History Museum. wythevillemuseums.com, Town of Wytheville Department of Museums. U.S. Virgin Islands Museum websites. St. Thomas. 6childrensmuseum.org, Virgin Islands Children's Museum. Vermont Museum websites. historicsites.vermont.gov, Chimney Point State Historic Site. Bennington. benningtonmuseum.org, Bennington Museum. historicsites.vermont.gov, State of Vermont Bennington Battle Monument. Burlington. ecovermont.org, Echo, Leahy Center for Lake Champlain. ethanallenhomestead.org, Ethan Allen Homestead Museum. Ferrisburg. Rokeby.org, Rokeby Museum. Hubbardston. historicsites.vermont.gov, Hubbardston Battlefield State Historic Site. Middlebury. middlebury.edu/museum, Middlebury College Museum of Art. Montpelier. vermonthistory.org, Vermont History Museum. Orwell. historicsites.vermont.gov, Mount Independence State Historic Site. historicsites.vermont.gov/Calvin-Coolidge, Calvin Coolidge State Historic Site. Shelburne. shelburnemuseum.org, Shelburne Museum. South Royalton. churchofjesuschrist.org/learn/historic-sites/Vermont/Joseph-birthplace?lang=Joseph Smith birthplace. AmericanPrecision.org, American Precision Museum. BillingsFarm.org, Billings Farm and Museum. Washington Museum websites. Bremerton. Kitsapmuseum.org, Kitsap History Museum. Puget Sound Navy Museum.org, Puget Sound Navy Museum. DuPont. DuPontMuseum.com, DuPont Historical Museum. Federal Way. PacificBonsaiMuseum.org, Pacific Bonsai Museum. Goldendale. MaryHillMuseum.org, Maryhill Museum of Art. Granite Falls. GFHistory.org, Granite Falls Historical Society. Ilwico. Columbia Pacific Heritage Museum.org, Columbia Pacific Heritage Museum. HistoricFortStyleAcum.org, Historic Fort Steilacoom Association. LakeWoldGardens.org, Lake Wold Gardens. Oak Harbor. PNWNAM.org, Pacific Northwest Naval Air Museum. Raymond. AnyCarriageMuseum.org, Northwest Carriage Museum. WillapahSeaportMuseum.com, Willapah Seaport Museum. Seattle. BurkeMuseum.org, Burke Museum of Natural History and Culture. telcomhistory.org/connections-museum-seattle, Connections Museum. Museumofflight.org, Museum of Flight. NordicMuseum.org, National Nordic Museum. SeattleArtMuseum.org, Seattle Art Museum. Sequim. SequimMuseum.com, Sequim Museum and Arts. Spokane. NorthwestMuseum.org, Northwest Museum of Arts and Culture. Steilacoom. SteilacoomHistorical.org, Steilacoom Historical Museum Association. Tacoma. Buffalo's Old Years, Tacoma.org, 9th and 10th Horse Cavalry Buffalo Soldiers Museum. Foss Waterway Seaport.org, Foss Waterway Seaport. Museumofglass.org, Museum of Glass. WashingtonHistory.org, Washington State Historical Society. Vancouver. CCHmuseum.org, Clark County Historical Museum. Yakima. YVmuseum.org, Yakima Valley Museum. Wisconsin Museum websites. Alma. CastleRockMuseum.com, Castle Rock Museum. Appleton. AtlasScienceCenter.org, Atlas Science Center. Belgium. Lax.lu, Luxembourg American Cultural Society and Center. Crivets. Krivitzmuseum.org, Crivets Stevenson Historical Society. Eau Claire. Children'sMuseumEc.com, Children's Museum of Eau Claire. CVmuseum.com, Chippewa Valley Museum. Elkhorn. Walco History, Walworth County Historical Society. Galesville. Eastsidefarm.org, Garden of Eden Preservation Society, Arnold House. Green Bay. TheAutomobileGallery.org, Automobile Gallery and Event Center. gbchildrensmuseum.org, Children's Museum of Green Bay. NationalRRmuseum.org, National Railroad Museum. NevillePublicMuseum.org, Neville Public Museum. Kenosha. TheCivilWarMuseum.org, Civil War Museum. DinosaurDiscoveryMuseum.org, Dinosaur Discovery Museum. KenoshaPublicMuseum.org, Kenosha Public Museum. LCHSHistory.org/Hickson-House, Historic Hickson House. LCHSHistory.org/La Crosse Heritage Center, La Crosse Area Heritage Center. MMocha.org, Madison Museum of Contemporary Art. WISVetsmuseum.com, Wisconsin Veterans Museum. Manitowoc. WisconsinMaritime.org, Wisconsin Maritime Museum. Milwaukee. DiscoveryWorld.org, Discovery World. Marquette.edu/Haggerty-Museum, Haggerty Museum of Art, Marquette University. JewishMuseumMilwaukee.org, Jewish Museum Milwaukee. Neillsville. TheHighGround.us, High Ground Veterans Memorial Park. North Freedom. Midcontinent.org, Midcontinent Railway Museum. Oshkosh. OshkoshMuseum.org, Oshkosh Public Museum. Platteville. Mining.jameson.museum, Mining and Rollo Jameson Museums. Sheboygan. JMKAC.org, John Michael Kohler Arts Center. SheboyganMuseum.org, Sheboygan County Museum. Sparta. DekeSlaytonMuseum.org, Deke Slayton Memorial Space and Bicycle Museum. MonroeCountyHistory.org, Monroe County Local History Room and Museum. Sturgeon Bay. DCMM.org, Door County Maritime Museum and Lighthouse Preservation Society, Inc. Sun Prairie. cityofsun-prairie.com/322/sun-prairie-historical-library-museum, Sun Prairie Historical Library and Museum. West Bend. wisconsinart.org, Museum of Wisconsin Art. Wisconsin Dells. hhbennettstudio.wisconsinhistory.org, H. Bennett Studio and Museum, Wisconsin Historical Society. West Virginia Museum websites. Elkins. AppalachianForestNA.org/visit, Appalachian Forest National Heritage Area. hmoa.org, Huntington Museum of Art. Morgantown. SparkWV.org, Spark. Imagination and Science Center. Wyoming Museum websites. Alcova. churchofjesuschrist.org/learn/historic-sites/Wyoming/Martins-Cove ? Martins Cove, Mormon Trail site. Casper. FortCasperWyoming.com, Fort Casper Museum. NHTCF.org, National Historic Trails Interpretive Center. WVMM.wyo.gov, Wyoming Veterans Memorial Museum. Cheyenne. WUmilitary.wy.gov/resources/veterans/museum/wy-national-guard-museum, Wyoming National Guard Museums. Cody. centerofthewest.org, Buffalo Bill Center of the West. DudeRanchFoundation.org, Dude Ranch Foundation. Dubois. NMMV.org, National Museum of Military Vehicles. Gillette. RockpileMuseum.com, Campbell County Rockpile Museum. WildlifeArt.org, National Museum of Wildlife Art. Lander. churchofjesuschrist.org/learn/historic-sites/Wyoming/6th-lang=6th Mormon Trail site. Pinedale. museumofthemountainman.com, Museum of the Mountain Man. Powell. heartmountain.org, Heart Mountain Wyoming Foundation. Warland. WashakiMuseum.org, Washakie Museum and Cultural Center.